And welcome back to Mixed Media Live. That was actually a little smooth transition there. And wait until you see what's to come. Awesome transitions to come. We're currently going through a growth phase with how this stream looks, how the show looks. Hopefully it's to your liking as we go along. If you don't like it or you have suggestions for how we should improve, you can go ahead and chat, submit comments, all that. I hope you guys are doing well. We have a great show in front of us. We're going to be talking about Star Wars. We're going to be talking about your hot takes. And then we're going to be talking about Dune. But first, I guess we'll introduce ourselves and explain what the show is. So first, my name's Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. Ben, who are you?
I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
Hey, I'm Nathan. I'm a game developer and 3D modeler.
Yeah, and we're Mixed Media. We're here every Friday at 7 p.m. for now, at least. And we won't be here for the next... Well, actually, we'll be here next week, but the following 2 weeks, the next Friday after next week is Christmas Eve, and then the following Friday is New Year's Eve. So very, very poor timing for the show. But we'll figure out something fun to put out in the meantime while we are away enjoying ourselves, and hopefully you're not trying to listen to us during those times, and hopefully you're having fun yourself. But yeah, hey guys, I see a bunch of people piling in, and that's awesome to see. We're also streaming on Discord, and I am attempting to stream on Locals, our support platform. And currently, the video is mirrored. This is an alpha test, I'll say, of the final version of our stream as we continue to improve it. All right, I guess we'll just hop to it. Well, actually, no. First, how are you guys this weeks? How's everything going?
All right. I feel like I'm, mostly done. I have basically I have to finish a paper which I'm almost done with, and then I have a kind of like a final exam performance essentially on Tuesday, and then I'm done with it for the semester. So, got through a lot this past week, or this week, I guess.
I'm sure that's a good feeling for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of exam performance is still intimidating, but it shouldn't be too bad, I hope. So
yeah. How about you, Nathan? Anything special?
Not really. Also almost done with class. Other than that, nothing too much going on.
Yeah, for me, I've been spending this entire week trying to work out the rest of my long list of podcast upgrades. A lot of back-end stuff was taken care of, which is really exciting. I think by the end of so I consider my work weeks to end on Saturdays, and I can't really spend more time like I have been the past 2 weeks on trying to get everything up to snuff. So I'm like, by tomorrow night, everything needs to be done. And then after that, it'll be slow, sort of incremental changes from there. So hopefully, I'm hoping to be on Odyssey as well, streaming there, if my bandwidth will allow it, because I can't go through Restream for that. And I'm also hoping to have our awesome voiceover stuff fully integrated. Right now, it is not, but you can see this cool, fancy transition. If you're watching video, if you're on Discord, then you won't be able to see it, of course. I didn't realize Stages was audio only until literally like 10 minutes ago, Nathan. So that's kind of a rip. I think what Stages is supposed to be. Yeah, I think what's supposed to be is a Clubhouse clone, essentially, which that dawned on me when I realized there was no video component to it.
I've seen people do talent shows through it, but I don't really know what you could do besides music, really, or maybe poetry or something like that. Yeah, without the visual component, I feel like it's just kind of an L for a lot of things.
Yeah, or a podcast like we're doing. Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, that works.
And maybe I'll figure it out one day where I can pull, if you join the Discord, I can pull your audio in, to the stream if you want to comment verbally or something like that. I don't know. That's going to be one of those incremental changes probably. But with that, I'll pass it off to Ben while I fiddle around with the stream. So
okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So Today I wanted to talk about the music for the opening scene of the Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, the real world chronologically third movie, obviously chronologically in the universe. And this is a topic I've wanted to talk about for a while because it's just such a. I mean, obviously, I think Star Wars is like the pinnacle of film music, and I'm not saying anything. I'm not, espousing any radical opinions by saying that. But this opening scene is like one of the most amazing things within the whole, six. We're forgetting episodes 7, 8, 9 with sequels. One of the most amazing bits of music in Star Wars in general. And honestly, I'm not sure that I know of a better opening scene with, in terms of how the music is integrated into it in any film anywhere. It's just so good. Yeah, so The Revenge of the Sith, I would say it's probably my second favorite Star Wars film. But even though I think the music for Empire Strikes Back is the pinnacle of film music, and I think it's the best Star Wars film, I think the music in that does a little bit less heavy lifting for the film than the music does for Revenge of the Sith. I think the music is really what elevates it from being not so great to being the best film, certainly of the prequel era. Unlike especially episode 2, which had kind of torturous life, bringing it to life, all sorts of the score not, the film not being ready in time for Williams before he had to move on to Harry Potter, and I guess the second one. So what is that? Chamber of Secrets. So there's a lot of patchwork stuff pulled from different cues. Like, oh, here's 5 seconds from earlier, and here's 1 second, patch with 1 second from the first film, and a lot of stuff like that. Unlike that, so not really kind of unlike the second film where there's a lot of borrowing and it's not really a fully cohesive musical tapestry the way that I think everyone wanted it to be at the time, including Lucas, I'm sure, and John Williams. This is a kind of fully integrated score, very different in tone than any of the other 6 Star Wars films to that point. A lot of the music from this film gets reused. I mean, a lot of music from everywhere in Star Wars gets reused in The Rise of Skywalker, but especially this film, just because it's got some really iconic things in it and also has some really fascinating stuff having to do with the Sith, the temptation and that sort of stuff. Like I said, the film is definitely the best of the prequel era, but the music is really doing more heavy lifting in terms of making it like better. Even just like the film itself is better than the other episodes 1 and 2, but the music is doing a lot more. In addition to that, this is really what helped elevate it to being a lot of people either their favorite Star Wars film or second favorite Star Wars film. And some of it, so the opening scene, it has a couple of challenges to it because of what this film is in the chronology of Star Wars. So, we know that at this point, when I talk about this, we're going to assume that you're watching this for the first time, okay? Because the effects are less pronounced later, but that's kind of true of all film music and anything to do with film in general, because you're going to get a different effect if you watch it in retrospect. But at the moment, right, when it came out, everyone knows, if you're a Star Wars fan, right, we know that this is the last film in which Anakin has to go from being that lovable little child, you can love him or not in episode 1, but from that to being Darth Vader in this film. So, we kind of know the end destiny of this film. We know we know that Obi-Wan's going to live, right? Obviously. We know that Yoda is going to be around. But beyond that, we know everything is going to have to fall apart. It's going to have to be a rather tragic ending. So it's kind of a challenge to this film because Star Wars is not generally like a vehicle for dealing with like an ominous, like impending doom. So Williams has to capture that, and this opening also has to establish the kind of friendship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, because the second film really kind of drops the ball on that. It seemed kind of like they're, if they're brothers, then they are like fighting siblings who don't really like each other in the second film. There's a challenge, especially in this opening scene, which is really when we get them together before their kind of climactic fight at the end. You have to, challenge for Lucas and for John Williams to make us believe that, they're inseparable, and that when they, when Anakin becomes Darth Vader and they fight each other, it's going to be, like a kind of a tragic rupture. So again, this is kind of not typical Star Wars tonal territory. It's also pretty different than all the other openings. All the other openings from the Star Wars films, right? Of course, they all start with the main title theme as we get the crawl, but thereafter, the music from the crawl in all the other films kind of melds into something with some really interesting tonal, harmonic stuff, and they all kind of have a sense of mystery. Even the first one, which we get the kind of big triumphant, like the rebel fanfare as we see the ships pass over our head, and that shot. Even before that, we get this kind of shot of the twinkling stars and this kind of distant reddish planet, and we get these very interesting chords in the strings, all sorts of like tritone part stuff and weird whole tone stuff within that. Very, very cool. So they're all kind of setting up this sense of mystery, even though the fourth one does have a little bit of that grandeur after that. The other ones, they all are just kind of like, we don't know what's going to happen. It's kind of strange atmosphere. We don't get that. So if you listen to the official soundtrack too, you will not get this, because the official soundtrack goes right from, main title theme, and it cuts out about 15 seconds that are in the film and goes right into when the whole orchestra comes in again. In the film, that is not what happens. In the film, we get a shot of a Republic Star Destroyer and over Coruscant, and we get these two notes on the bass drum repeated 3 times. And this is a really fascinating beginning, because we've got this transition from glorious music, right, from the opening credits to boom, 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 right, repeated 3 times. It was very, very big contrast. Feels very empty, and to me, this kind of the section right here, and it's likely that this is tracked in later. So the afterwards, they decided to insert this thing and just had a bass drum player do this. It doesn't seem like it was in the original plans, because it's not in the official soundtrack. But really brilliant decision. Okay, this kind of, to me, sets up this whole idea of like, this is kind of a fateful moment here. It's kind of setting up that sense, but we already have it. Like, there has to be some kind of feeling of doom. Like, we know where this is heading, even if we don't know the exact details of how it happens. We know, Anakin is going to become Darth Vader. Not that, of course, that happens in this scene, but we know that's the trajectory of the film. It's also interesting because, I've talked before about music kind of being about, affecting heart rate and reflecting characters' heart rate and also affecting listeners' heart rate. And this is a perfect scene for talking about that. I mean, literally, it sounds like this opening bass drum, like we got this really heavy, like, heartbeat, kind of slow, but like forceful. And that's what it feels like to me. And I've actually been reading quite a bit of literature and on more recent stuff where people are kind of scholars are kind of digging into the relationship between music and rhythm and heart rate and tempo and relative speed. Very interesting stuff. So it only reinforces what I'm saying as kind of my personal belief. Okay, so we've talked about before the concept of Mickey Mousing, but in case you are new to the show or haven't heard any of those episodes, Mickey Mousing is a very old film music concept where the music is mimicking what happens on screen in some way or another. Classic examples would be like, if a horse is running, right? Like you hear something that sounds like, the horse trotting, like, the sound of its feet. Or the other classic example is like if someone gets hit by an arrow, the frame where they get hit by the arrow, you hear like bang or something like that. Some kind of musical indicator that has happened. It's an impact. So there's a lot of Mickey Mousing here, but it's not typical Mickey Mousing. So it's a little bit hard to talk about this in full without showing some clips from it. But I'm gonna just kind of walk through a few examples of what's going on. And these aren't necessarily things you're going to pick up when you watch it the first time, but they're just an indicator of how tightly this opening scene is constructed. So after we have the bass drum, we get no music for a few seconds, and Anakin and Obi-Wan's starfighter, they both come into the scene. We get the sound of their starfighter, whatever sound their engine makes. There's no sound in space, but whatever. And then we get after about second or two of seeing them flying past the Star Destroyer, the full orchestra enters. Thereafter, so we get a lot of little tiny details of Mickey Mousing. So like when they're and it's very important, right, to show that their planes are in lockstep, moving perfectly in sync because they are that close to each other. They know each other's moves that well. When their ships kind of do like a barrel roll, right? We get lots of spirally figures in the woodwinds. When their ships take a sudden dive, we get kind of like that kind of motion throughout the orchestra. There are a lot of other really cool things. This is kind of, I don't take credit for recognizing this, but some of the blaster fire, from like the laser cannons from the ships, is in triplet figures, like three note groups, in tempo, kind of in counterpoint with the music. So it's cool. In the same tempo where like the trumpets will play triplet figure, like 3-note figure, and then the blasters will do 3-note figure. Very cool.
It's interesting. That's like not only is like the sound department involved in that, but it's also like you have to get like the people who do the visuals to get that done too.
Yeah. So to me, that says that the music was written probably written first before some of these things were added, which is probably not the normal. I mean, I imagine that sort of like sound and visual effects work is normally done well before the music is added. But yeah, very, very tight construction. So lots of things like that, like the motion of the planes, starfighters is very, very closely mimicked a lot of times. There's a cool moment too where Anakin he's being trailed by 2 torpedoes, and in order to get rid of them, he flies in this really tight spiral, and the torpedoes that are following him collide into each other before they hit him, because they're trying to track the plane, I guess, or starfighter. I don't know why I keep saying plane. But while he's doing that really tight, corkscrew, all sorts of really cool like harmonic stuff. It sounds like very disorienting. Like you feel like you're like, I don't know, like in 0G or something like that. It's or I don't know. I've never experienced that myself. But what I think most people would imagine that would sound like. It just feels kind of like nausea-inducing. So that sort of like explicit motion Mickey Mousing, and then like where the lasers are like interacting with the music rhythmically, which is I'd call that Mickey Mousing, but almost in reverse. The scene is trying to mimic the music. So the other thing that's really important to note is that unlike all the other opening scenes here for the other Star Wars films, there's just a profusion of really long melody. And I'm actually I was just looking this up before the show. Frank Lemon, or I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, L-E-H. I've mentioned him before. Frank Lemon, Layman, L-E-H-M-A-N, who's kind of the like most academically serious person about John Williams, who has his full 70-page catalog of the themes of Star Wars and all of his annotations on them. If you look on his his 70-page thing on this on music of Star Wars, he comes up with lots of what he calls incidental themes and set piece themes, and he doesn't mention any of the themes that are in this opening scene, which is really remarkable to me. He mentions the bass drum, but nothing else. And he mentions a lot of other things that are like really minor that only occur once, like literally are played once. While there are a lot of themes that are in this opening scene that are played multiple times in this opening scene and don't get mentioned. So I'm a little curious as to why he's not so interested in all the stuff that happens in this scene. But really long brass melodies. It opens, of course, with the in addition to all sorts of Mickey Mousing with the secondary instruments, all the horns playing the Force theme, which no other Star Wars film opens with the Force theme. It's right in your face when the music starts. And again, that's a theme that's kind of associated with like pivotal moments, right? Pivotal choices in the fate of the galaxy. So it makes sense for us to start that way, especially because, like I said, we know if you're watching this the first time, that this is what the ultimate consequence, the ultimate fate here is going to be. So what the stakes are for this film. That the galaxy is kind of on the line, even though what the end is going to be. So it's a question of how we get there. Also, we get the only time the Rebel fanfare occurs in the prequel trilogy, when the Buzz droid is attacking, is on Anakin's ship, and is kind of fighting against R2, and R2 zaps him in the eye and destroys it and dies, flies off the ship. It's the only time we get the Rebel fanfare in the prequels. I guess my thought is that's just a reflection of like kind of heroic space combat triumph that we don't really have much of in the prequels. So it's kind of cool that we get that. So in terms of heart rate, there's a lot of really fascinating stuff with how that works. So we start off lots of like big hits where we transition from like the two of them flying, and suddenly we see like the full scope of the battle, and we see lots of laser fire. Big kind of downbeat hit there. Another really big kind of downbeat hit. First time we see like actual explosions and like ships getting hit, people flying, and dead people flying in space, which we do actually see in this. Kind of unique in Star Wars. Those are all big landing points. But once we sort of, after we get through that, like we see that, combat's actually happening, people are dying. We get to this really heavy stuff that is very similar to part of the Rite of Spring, actually, which, if you're not familiar with the Rite of Spring, kind of be the most important 20th century classical piece by Igor Stravinsky. And we're talking about the part where we have the strings while playing these, heavy downbeat chords that are tritone apart, or sorry, half step apart. So that we don't get quite that harmonic dissonance in this, but we get the same sort of like figure with its rhythmic irregularities in all the strings, and a very heavy. In Stravinsky and Rite of Spring, it's a kind of dance, but not really a dance here. I definitely think that's sort of the inspiration for what Williams is doing here. But so it's really, to me, driving home this like, heart rate and like very heavy and irregular, right? We're kind of shifting the meter here and there, and it's also being interrupted by all sorts of like, stuff, outbursts from the trumpets and the woodwinds. And that's, going on as Obi-Wan and Anakin, they're encountering fire against them from vulture droids, and the torpedoes are coming after them. And then as the buzz droids attack Obi-Wan's ship and destroy his R4 droid, and his ship starts failing, I guess, the same figure gets put up 2 octaves in the string. So again, kind of heightening our, the tension of the heartbeat again, emphasizing that. And then we get to the moment where, Obi-Wan thinks that he's going to die, basically, and he tells Anakin to keep going, and Anakin has to, stress that I'm not going to leave you. And at that moment, we get to a completely different cue, and suddenly the tempo is like 3 times as fast, or at least seemingly 3 times as fast in terms of relatively, in terms of how we kind of feel the meter, not what the actual meter is. And again, that's, to me, like, we're going off the characters' heartbeats here. We're not not our own, especially not in retrospect, because there's really no tension. There's no tension, but we know that again that they're both going to survive here, but they don't know that, right? And again, we have to establish this relationship between this closeness between Anakin and Obi-Wan. So Anakin is afraid that his friend, mentor, brother is going to die, and he's not going to leave him. So he's, we get the kind of that nervousness from him, and even more interruptions to that from the woodwinds. Again, it kind of jarring, right? We can't. It's like rapid heart rate. We can't really settle down into even something that's rapid. So I don't know, very, very cool, in my opinion. Of course, the scene kind of ends with them flying towards the interior of General Grievous's ship, and they gotta fly through as this, like, the blast door is closing to the hangar bay, and again the music, like the tempo suddenly picks up one more time. And Obi-Wan makes his comment like, I have a bad feeling about this, right? The classic Star Wars line. Are we going to make it through this? Music, again, reflects that in terms of its speed. And it ends with a fantastic transition where the ships are kind of skidding on the big ship's hangar floor. And Obi-Wan flips out while his ship is still like sliding, and already has his lightsaber in hand and slices through a battle droid. And that's the end of the music. The scene doesn't end. We still see Anakin's ship sliding, and then he waits for his ship to stop moving and breathes a sigh of relief, and then steps out of his ship. So kind of an interesting contrast in their style there, but really fantastic hit point where ending with Obi-Wan flipping out of his ship, and last notice he slices through the battle droid. So overall, really, really incredibly tightly, constructed. Every detail of what's going on is accounted for, making sure that we kind of feel, the tragedy and like the sense of impending doom and fatefulness with the bass drum, and starting with the Force theme. Mickey Mousing, I think, reinforcing the motion of the starfighters to help stress, and build up that impression that was lacking in a second film of the kind of closeness of Anakin and Obi-Wan. Probably more Mickey Mousing than any other space battle in Star Wars too, and I think that's part of the reason why, to help establish that like all of these motions are in sync with each other, calling our attention to that in some subconscious way. Yeah, and then just like the really, I think, expert play of like paying attention to the tension that the characters are feeling, and like, in theory, it should also increase our attention to whether it does or not. I'll leave that up to to you when you watch it, especially if you watch it the first time. But I think it really reflects what the characters are feeling and feeling about each other too. So, overall, just such a amazing opening. All these long melodies on top of all this like really rhythmic stuff is kind of hammering in this feel of like, heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. All these like really long melodies that are just not present in any other Star Wars openings. Really not really many opening scenes of any film that I'm familiar with. It is on top of all this tension. It is heroic. This is the two best Jedi, I guess. At the height of their powers and their camaraderie, we got that heroic, large, long, heroic moment out of them that we kind of don't have in the second film that, we kind of need in order to set up the tragedy of Anakin's fall to the dark side and fight with Obi-Wan. So, yeah, really, really fantastic opening scene. I can never, I've watched it so many times, and it doesn't get old. It only gets better every time I watch it. So.
Yeah, I wish we could listen to things alongside you saying them, because I'm imagining them, and it really sucks that we can't just like go ahead and watch the scenes. Basically, I feel like that would be really awesome.
I do recommend that if you're gonna if you are interested in this, you want to watch the scene and not listen to the official soundtrack, because the official soundtrack, in addition to like cutting out the opening bass drum, it inserts music that is cut from the film. It's originally in the scene where Grievous kills Shaak Ti, which you can see like the in deleted scenes from the film, but it's not in the actual film. So it inserts that. It changes the order of when some of these things occur. So the official soundtrack's got a lot of what's in the film, but not in the right order. And yeah, you want to watch the scene itself if you can.
I just realized that, sometimes I listen to Star Wars music, outside of the movie. And I've never seen the prequels, but I've seen bits and pieces of the prequels, but never the whole thing in its entirety. And I've listened to some of the music, and there are some songs where I can very vividly like picture what's happening, because there's definitely certain times where the music is for sure referencing what's happening at that exact moment. What comes to mind is like the song. I get the names confused, so I'm not sure. I don't remember what it's called. But the song that plays during Order 66, essentially, right? That's very. You really throughout the entire thing, you can, each step essentially. You can imagine maybe not the exact frame, but the general idea of what's at least what scene you're on, I guess.
Right. And I will say that like a lot of the big numbers from all parts in all three of the prequel films, but especially in this film, in case, some of the lines don't land or like we're not totally convinced by anything, the music is really kind of making up for that in the emotional impact of like Order 66, or when Anakin and Obi-Wan have their kind of climactic fight and Mustafar. In case you weren't convinced by some of the less than perfect dialogue leading up to that moment, the music is gonna, like I said, the music does a lot of heavy lifting in this film. It makes up in a lot of ways emotionally for what we have to assume is happening, and not just rely. If we just rely on like some of the dialogue, it's not. I'm not convinced just by the dialogue. Yeah, that's my quick summary without referencing the actual scene itself.
Yeah, I wonder if there's I'll have to do some investigating, but I wonder if showing frames is an issue or not for for the content police. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I don't know. But
I don't think so, but I would check to make sure.
It's more like the bots, I don't think it's a problem legally speaking. It's more like the bots like sniff it and be like, your stream is done.
Yeah.
So I'll have to look into that.